Use case 22. Allow updating the task record only if the parent contact's account record has the modify task permission checked. Okay, so this is kind of a custom field that we'll be creating on the account record, and if this permission is checked or unchecked, based on that we will let people update the task record or will not let them, right? So here it says allow updating them only when this is checked. That means we need to stop them from doing it if it is not checked, and for that we need to add error, right? And if we add error, what context do we use, before or after? We use the before context. Okay, and this would be on the update context, so it would be before update. All right, and what object is it on? It is on the task object. Before that, I'll go ahead and create this field on the account record. So let's go to account. So my field is created. I'll go to the the task trigger now. So I'll say task trigger, and this is on the before update context. So I'll add this context here, and I'll create a new section or a block for the before update context. Handle activities before update, right? And before update, I'll keep the trigger.new variable. I'll say save. Now this method is not there, so I'll just say go to the task trigger handler and create a similar method to this, and I'll say this should be before update. Save. It should save up now. This saved up fine, and now let's save this here. Okay, no errors. Now let's proceed to our use case. Now before proceeding, let's take a look at a task record. Okay, so if I go to this task record, let's say this record right here, right? So you see the name field is the who ID, and that is basically either a lead record or a contact record, right? And you need to go to this particular contact record, and then from this contact you need to access the parent account record. And on the account record, you will see whether a checkbox is checked or not. Based on that, you will decide whether the task should be updated or not. Okay, so this is the field we are targeting, the name field. Now what is this name field? If I open the object, and if I open the task object, so the who ID is the name field. Okay, so if I say select who ID comma what ID from task, so you see it has 003 here. 003 is nothing but contact records, or they can be lead records. The who ID, they are actual entities or real deal. And what is kind of objects? They are entities. They are not real, but they exist, like organizations. So it can be account or opportunities, right? So we are wanting to take a look at this who ID, and from this who ID, which is rather the contact information, we are trying to fetch the parent account record, and on the account record we are trying to fetch a specific checkbox field. That is what we need to do on the trigger handler. Okay, so I'll go ahead and say for each task in task records, if, so now you see, like I said, who ID cannot just be one specific type of object. So I cannot simply say account ID list dot add con dot account ID. I cannot do that. Why? Because I am not sure whether the record that's associated to the who ID is basically a contact record or a lead record. So I believe we did something similar previously. What we did was we did a if condition to check whether the object or the record ID starts with a specific identifier or not. So 003 is for contact, 005 is for opportunity, 001 is for account, right? So they have a key prefix. Every object has a specific key prefix, and this key prefix is standard across all orgs, does not differ at all. Okay, so that is standard. So what I'll say is if each task dot who ID, right? This is my who ID field, and it can now be either a contact or a lead record. Now if it is one of them, I just want to say if it starts with, right? We don't want to say contains because it might be in the middle also, but we specifically want to check if it starts with the keyword 003. If it does, it has to be a contact. that is certified. Now if I hit on the save button, I can add this particular list here and say save, and after saving it I can just define this particular list here. So it's a list of ID, account ID list equal to new list of ID. Save. Now let's see what are the errors. So the errors are still there. So it says method does not exist, starts with from the type ID. So this is a ID type. I have to convert it to a string because starts with takes a string parameter and then uses it. Okay, so I can use the string dot value of method. I believe we did this with some other use case. Okay, let's say save. Let's say save one more time. Okay, I still get an error. This is because I did a typo. This string dot value of should close here because this is what we're trying to convert into a string. This is of type ID, and now this particular function surrounded with this particular parameter will convert this to a string, and then this dot operator with this method will work. Let's say save now. Okay, so this is saved. Now this is saying account ID list dot add variable does not exist con. So con does not exist. This is not contact. So this is each task dot who ID. Okay, I just have the contact ID here. I have still not reached the parent account. Okay, now that I have the contact ID, I also want to create a, this should not be called the account ID list. I'm not sure why am I writing account ID. I'm trying to reach it fast, maybe that's why. So I'll say contact ID list, say save. And now I also want to create a map. I'll create a map that would be basically for task versus con map dot put each task dot ID comma each task dot who ID. Okay, and this will be a map of type ID comma ID. We'll use this map very soon. Okay, so I've just created the map and I've put the values. It contains the task record ID as the key and the contact ID as the value. I think you already know why I've done this, so that I am able to fetch the right contact for every task, right? So this is the for loop. I'll come out of this for loop, and now I want to query out all the account records. So I'll say list of account records. And who do I want to query? I want to select ID from account where, let's try it this way. Select ID from account where ID in, and I'll write an outer query. I'll say select account ID from contact where account ID in, and I have the contact ID list, right? So I'll just use this. So it should be where ID in contact ID list. So I have all the contact IDs with me. I don't have a way to find which IDs do I want on the account. So I've written an outer query. Okay, so I'm comparing the account ID with the account ID on the contact record. Let's see if this works. So if I just say save, let's see what happens. So it's saying unexpected token. Maybe this should not be like this. Let's say save now. Yeah, so this is it. So I've written an outer query. Okay, so I'm saying select ID comma, what is that field that we wanted to query? I believe that field was modify, what was that? Modify task permission, right? So I'll just copy this and I'll just paste it here. Okay, so this should be modify task permission. So see, in a single line I'm fetching all my account records which are part of the, which are rather the parent account records of the contacts which are part of the tasks that have come in the transaction in a single query. How? By using an outer query. You use inner query for what? For bringing children records, right? So you can say select ID comma select ID from contacts. You can bring in children here, but if you want to use an outer query by associating or doing the relationship thing, you can use this by using the in clause, and whatever records are part of this query will be returned to this ID, and if it contains, it will return some rows for this particular query, outer query. Cool. So that's another query that we learned. Now I have all the account records. What do I want to do? I want to basically map my task with the account, right? And that's difficult. With this account record list, I will not be able to do that, correct? Because there's no way to find out which task is associated to which contact and which contact is associated to which account. I have to find a mediator, right? Which means I will need one more map. Okay, so in order to get one more map, I have to basically query my contact records. I have to do that somehow. Okay, so I'll say list of contact. Let me think this through. Do I need the contact records? I basically need a map. I'll tell you what I'm thinking. Okay, I'm basically trying to do this. I have a map that is basically of type task comma contact. Okay, and then I have account records, but I need to link with this particular map. So I need another map that can have the key as contact and give me the account record, right? And in order to do that, I have to have this map, correct? So let me go ahead and query the contact records. So I'll say clean list of contact con records equals select account ID from contact where ID in contact ID list. So that single circle did not work because we have to have a connection between this map and this map. That is when this task will reach this account by using a mediator, that is the contact, right? So I'll get this contact records and now I'll use a map. I'll say for each contact record in con records, I'll create one more map, and this will basically be con versus account map. Okay, and I'll say con versus account map dot put con dot id comma con dot account id. So I'm storing this particular thing that I need, contact comma account information. Okay, we'll see how this works and how this comes into our leverage. I'll say save. Okay, any errors as of now? No errors. I'll get rid of these two boxes for now. Right, now I have this map. Now what I'll do is I'll query again on my task, because I now want to use my task records and basically throw an error based on the permission. Okay, so I'll say task in task records, each task. Okay, now see how do I use this map. I have a map that's called task versus con map. Okay, and I have an account, and I have another map that is con versus account map. Okay, so what if I say task versus con map? See, read this carefully. If task versus con map dot get, now get means I need the key. What is the key? The task ID. So the task ID I have here, so I'll take this task ID. Okay, now what will this give me? This will give me the value of this particular map. What is the value? The value is the contact, right? It is the contact ID, right? So this will give me the contact ID. So what if I told you this? If I say con versus account map dot get, and I put this entire thing inside this bracket, so this will evaluate to giving me the contact ID, and this will evaluate to giving me the account ID. Does that make sense? See, because I have another map that is basically storing the key as the contact ID and it has the value of account ID. So this internal map will give me, using the get command, it will give me the value which is the contact ID, and this in turn will be used as another key to another map, and this will now give me the account ID that I have stored here, right? So you see, I have received my account ID. All right, now there's one more thing here. I have just received the account ID. I need to access this entire record. How do I access the entire record? Instead of writing a for loop here, I can simply do the map thing that we learned in our previous use case. I'll say new map ID comma account. Instead of putting it as a list, I'll use it as an account map. Okay, and I'll call it account record map. Let's say save. Let's see if this saves a fine. Okay, so this saved up fine. Now I have the account record map. So now let's come back here. See, I have a map that has the task ID. Let me write ID also, that will make it clearer. And I have the contact ID. I have another map that has the contact ID, and then it has the account ID. And now I have been successfully able to reach from task ID to the account ID, but I want to reach the account record. So I want to reach a place wherein I can have the task ID comma the account record. And in order to do that, I now have the account ID here. This is returning me the account ID, right? Now what if I said account record map dot get in the very outside? So this entire thing will evaluate to giving me the account ID, right? And then this particular map will get me the account record, and I can say here dot modify task permission if the permission is not there. That means I'll say not. Only then go inside and add an error and say you cannot update this task and say save. That is all. This should save a fine, no errors. Now let's test it out and I'll come back and revisit this and we'll try to understand one more time what we did. Okay, so now I have this particular task in my hand and this is the user one contact. Let me go ahead and try to modify it. Let's say subject will be changed to email. Let's say save. So it's saying you cannot update this task. Okay, why is it saying you cannot update this task? Let's go to this particular user one record. Let's go to details. Let's refresh our contact and then let's move on to the account record. So the task permission is set to false. What if I set this to true? Let's set this to true and say save. And now let's go back and let's go to tasks. Let's open the send letter task and let's try to modify it now. Should it allow me to modify it? It's allowing me to modify it, right? So the checkbox was false, which means you don't have the rights to modify the task. But as soon as I checked it, we had the permission. Cool. So the use case is working fine. Let's come back because we did a lot of map stuff, but I want you to understand how the brain works when you're trying to figure out the solution, right? Just try to be with me here for the next 5 minutes. I hope that you'll be able to understand. I simply call the before update method. That is fine, nothing fancy, easy peasy. And then I just iterated over my task records. Cool. Why did I do this? To check if who ID is a contact or a lead. Proceed only if it is a contact. That is why this check. So each task.whoid, if it starts with the keyword 003, we are certain that it is a contact. And if it is a contact, I just said contact ID list.add, add the contact ID list, and I also created a map. I created a map for task versus contact. So here I have a map that is basically task ID versus contact ID. Cool. I have this ready. Now remember where we have to reach. If you take a look at the use case, you have to reach from the task to the parent contacts, parent accounts record. Okay. So already task and contact are in a relationship, and then contact and account is also in a relationship, and account has a field that you want to take a look at. That was our use case. Okay. So right now we have reached at a point wherein we have something that's task ID versus contact ID. Okay. Next, what we did was we fetched all the account records. We fetched all the account records which were part of the contacts that came into the picture. How did we do that? How did we filter out those specific accounts, those parents? We did a simple query till here, and then in the where clause we said give me only those IDs of accounts which are part of the contact, which are parents to contact records, where contacts are part of the contact ID list, which is nothing but the contacts who have task here in this transaction. So I filtered out only those accounts, right? And I did not use a list because I wanted another map so that I could hold the account ID. So what is this holding? This is holding account ID versus account record. Okay, every ID corresponding to every record. And then what I did was I also queried all my contact records, and because I wanted a link between the task ID versus contact ID and this map right here, I wanted to connect these two. And how can these two connect? By the relationship of parent and child. So I created one more map here, which was contact ID versus account ID. Okay, so now you see I have something that's from starting from task. I have contact ID. From this contact ID, I reached this map, and from this map I got the account ID, and from this account ID I reached this account ID, and I reached this map and got this record, and from this record I pulled in the modify task permission value, and if it was true or false, I showed the error. This is all that is in this line. Cool. Take a look at this line and read it. See, this nomenclature or naming convention will help you now. Why? Because see, what did I do? The very first thing is here. I iterated over my task records that are currently in the transaction. So I said task versus conmap.get each task.id. So this gave me the con ID. This gave me the contact. Okay. If I have to show you, this is my task. Okay. This is what I modified. So task versus conmap.each task of ID. Instead of each task of ID, you would have this particular ID here. This record, this one, right? Let's say this is the task name, email. So it said get email. So it found out what is the contact for this particular guy. So it replaced this with the contact. The contact is user1. So this became user. Okay. Now the outer map, what it did was it fetched the contact. It opened the contact, and what did it want to get? It wanted to get the account ID information from this contact right here. So it went in and saw con versus account map.get user1. It saw that it has the parent community test account. So it went in and gave this particular ID. Okay, I'm just using name so that it is not confusing. This is not being selected, so I'll just type it out. So this returned me community test account ID, the record ID. And then account record map.get community test account ID, which means it gave me the entire account record that I have here, this record right here, this one, right? And then as soon as I had this record, I just said dot modify task of permission. So I wanted to check this particular field, this field. Okay. And if it was false, I wanted to show an error. If it was true, I wanted to let them update it. That is what I wanted it to do. Right? Looks good? Cool. So that was use case 22.